Hello everyone, my name is Angela Zabel. I am a teacher, coach, and medium. And today I would like to talk about perception. Our personal perception is something very different from someone who may be right next to you. And I will say, if you see a tail, it is not me. I have a little guest today who decided to join me, so my cat Mittens may be joining us in times. She loves when I do this stuff, and I got tired of keeping her out. So, today I would like to talk about perceptions. One of the things with perceptions is it's our personal experience. It comes from everything we've ever experienced throughout our lives. So, let's think about that. You can have someone who goes into a movie theater and you can sit right next to them. You can even have grown up with them, maybe a brother, sister, mother, dad. And throughout that time, you'll go to the theater and you'll see this movie and you'll both come out with different perceptions on how you felt about the movie, how you felt about what it did for you inside, and if you liked it or not. So, when you talk to that person, you'll find out things that they liked that you didn't. That's perception because of life experiences. But now let's take it a little bit deeper. So, if you're next to someone in a grocery store and something happens and that person gets very upset, but it doesn't bother you at all, and you can't figure out why they're getting upset. It's perception. And perception is anything you are experiencing yourself. And you shouldn't be upset or wanting someone else to change because they look at things differently. It's really what makes the world go round. And think about it. If someone has a reaction to something that happens, and say they do get very upset or get very happy about something. Now think about that. By you watching that reaction to their perception, you learn something. So you look at it and go, wow, I never realized when I myself have that reaction to something, how it looks from the outside. So that's something we really need to look at, is it isn't bad for someone to have that reaction. Look at it as a learning aspect for you. So now we want to look at people who have had bad things happen to them. Some have had abuse. And when they hear a certain word or a certain mannerism may be happening with someone they're with, you'll see them, sometimes they'll tense up, or sometimes they're very good at masking it, keeping it inside. But inside it's more of a turmoil that they're going through, trying to work through these emotions. And that's something to be respected. We really need to respect everyone and the journey they're on. Not everybody is on your journey and on your time frame. And that's okay. That's the way it should be. We don't need to be on someone else's time frame. And we shouldn't be. We're on our own time frame to work through our own journey. But what a helpful thing it is to realize when you see something you yourself are working on, and to see it played out by someone else in a different part of their journey, but it makes you kind of sit back and go, oh, now I see how it's affecting me as a person. And that's the biggest thing. how it's affecting me, because now I can see it play out with someone else. So it's not our job to change that person. It's our job to look at ourselves and say, if that's playing out in that way in that person's life, then how is that same type of perception playing out in my own life? How is it affecting me? Some people can't have a hard time, I can't say can't handle it, but have a hard time dealing with some of their emotions. And it's okay to realize that I'm having a hard time with this, but then to let myself off the hook, to say, it's okay to have a hard time with it. It's something I'm working through. And that's something that people maybe don't give other people the opportunity to go through that experience. And that's where the enabling comes from. So a lot of times people will think, oh, I'm really helping them. I'm taking care of this. They don't have to deal with that. But sometimes the growth will happen faster in the person you're trying to help if you let them experience the full aspect of what they're dealing with and going through. To give encouraging words is one thing, but then to let them figure it out and put the pieces together on their own, that's where the empowerment comes from. Because think of it, when you're a child, and let's just take the aspect of tying a person's shoe, tying a child's shoe. So as a child, you're tying your shoes and you're trying and you're trying. Your parents tie it for you for a long time. And then you say, you know what? I could get things done quicker. I wouldn't have to ask when I sneak out of the house in the morning to go play outside. I wouldn't have to do that if I could learn to do this on my own. But throughout that, you get frustrated, probably get angry, maybe a few tears. But when that child works through that, how happy are they when they're done? It's the, I can do that. Why are you helping me? I can do that by myself. I can do it by myself. How many times have you heard a child say that? I can do it by myself. Now think of that. As a person gets older, as a child gets older, and they encounter things that are difficult. And believe me, tying my shoes was difficult for me. And if you ask anybody you know, or I should say anybody I know, you'll discover that I tie my shoes in my own unique way. And not many people can replicate it because I was determined to tie my shoes. And I found a book in our little library when I grew up that showed pictures how to tie my shoe. Now the unfortunate thing was, or maybe fortunate, was the last few pages were torn out, probably by some other smaller child. But because of that, I improvised and made my own way to tie my shoe. It may be different, it may be unique, but it's my way and it works. So don't worry about it being the correct way that's shown in all the books or the way you hear about or other people say, because that doesn't matter. It's what works for that person in that moment. And I have to tell you, I think it works darn good and I've used it for years. Maybe I should write a new book on how to tie your shoes the unique way. But that's what people need to do. They're going to find their own unique way, their own unique journey. And what an amazing impact that will be for that person. So let's think about that. If we do everything when people run into difficult situations, adult situations, and some of these are even child situations, abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, and I'm going to go into there's sexual abuse, there's physical abuse, all of those things. You bet. Be there. Be ready to help when they ask. But if they're not asking, you can put it out there to say, hey, I'm here to talk if you want. But the hardest part is to sit back and let them fully experience what they're going through so they can process it fully and know where they need the help. Just like the child tying their shoe, how do they know where they need the help at that would help them the most unless we give them the chance to see it for themselves? And then say, you know what? I've been struggling with this, but I had to work through it to figure out where I needed the help. And that's something very difficult to do as humans, to step back and have the help there, have the hand there, but not to cover it up, not to take care of every hurt, because all that happens is that person is saying, you know what, I really can't experience those things because everybody says it's wrong. So I need to bury it and bury it and bury it. And how helpful is that? How many people, how many of us have taken things in our lives and buried them deep, only to have it resurface in so many different ways? I look at it as like a sponge. It fills up with water. So you take a sponge and it fills up with water, and you can get so much into this sponge. So think of all the negative things that have ever happened to you, the negative aspects of people who have done things to you, has said things to you, certain things that stick out, your perception. And you're saying, you know, I'm not supposed to deal with this. Everybody says I'm supposed to put it down. So you keep putting it in this sponge, and you're filling up this sponge. And look at how much you can fit into that sponge. But at some point, that sponge starts leaking. And then when you start looking at it, it starts leaking not in one spot, but all over. And if you try to put some more in and squish it, it's like, I'm just going to squish stuff, whatever I've got in me, down further so I could add more. And what happens when you start squishing that sponge? It starts spurting everywhere. Water goes everywhere. Think of that the same way as your emotions. The more you try to stuff down, you can stuff it for a while, but then it hits a tipping point and it's full. You're going to have to examine it. And if you try to squish it to get more in, anger, resentment, depression, a lot of those emotions come squirting out in all different directions. And a lot of times they have nothing to do with what really happened in the beginning. But we weren't allowed to evaluate and have our own perception. And that's something I hope all of you take away from this, is to allow others to have that perception. Are they going to go down a deep, dark hole sometimes? Yes, they are. But if they don't figure it out for themselves, the change can never happen. How many of you out there have tried to help people with suicidal thoughts, with alcoholism, with drug abuse? How many of you have done interventions? And for those of you who didn't succeed, I deeply feel for you because I personally know what it's like. It's difficult. But you have to remember, you were not the one meant to succeed or fail. And that's not really the way that it should be looked at. This is not a success or failure. This is one person's journey and the journey they chose to take. Think of all the times people that are dealing with abuse, they deal with it over and over and over again. Even physical abuse. We wonder, how can they keep going back? How can the person keep taking one more drink, keep taking one more shot of drugs? And we have to be able to realize, for all those out there who have people who have recovered, when you really look at it, it wasn't us that made them do that. It was them. They chose to change their perception, as difficult as that is. They were the ones that had to choose inside themselves what they wanted to do with their life. So to all of you going through this in your lives out there, I feel for you. I've been there in a lot of different aspects. I've had people pass around me who couldn't get through that addiction, couldn't get through that depression. But I've also had others who did. And seeing that, just like tying their shoes, they had to do it themselves. You always offered encouragement to those that were learning to tie their shoes, just as you can offer encouragement. But ultimately, it's up to that person. So today, I want you to pull yourself back from some of those situations and realize everyone has their own perception. And you have to look at the perception of what you are doing in your life and honor the perception of others as they go through their life. And with that, I know this wasn't the most uplifting at times, but I'm here to be real. I'm not here to sugarcoat. I'm going to tell it the way it is, and that's who I am. For those that know me, you know this. So with that, I hope all of you think about your perception on your life today. And maybe look at others with a different perception. The perception that they are divine human beings, figuring out their way, having their perception in their life. And with that, I hope all of you like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to see more videos, sometimes on the tougher subjects, sometimes on the funner subjects, but they're all subjects near and dear to my heart. And with that, I wish all of you an amazing day.